Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more Socrates. Today we are going to be diving back into the works of Plato. This is Plato's Republic, Book 5. We are doing a reading of it, and we are going to pick up where we left off. We left off with them deciding that the state should have the right to say who you procreate with, and what happens to your children once they have been procreated. And quit of all of this, our guardians will live a life more blessed than the life of the Olympic victors. In what way? These victors are made happy by a small portion of what those guardians get, for their victory is more beautiful and their popular support is more comprehensive. Indeed, the victory they win is the safety of the entire city, and they are crowned with support and everything else that human life requires. They and their children, too. They receive honors from their own city during their lives and are granted a worthy burial when they die. Yes, that is all very beautiful, said he. Now, said I, do you remember that in our earlier discussions, an argument, I don't even know whose, took us to task by remaining that we were not making our guardians happy? Because even though it is possible for them to own everything belonging to their fellow citizens, they have nothing. And I think that we said that we would look at this again if it turned out to be the case. But at the moment, we are making our guardians into guardians and making our city as happy as possible without focusing upon one group or another within the city and working on its happiness. I remember, said he. Well then, since the lives of our auxiliaries now turn out to be far better and more beautiful than the life of Olympic victors, is there any way it compares to the life of shoemakers, or other artificers, or to the life of farmers? I do not think so, said he. In that case, what I said there may be rightly be repeated here. If a guardian attempts to attain happiness in a way that makes him a guardian no longer, and if such a measured and stable life, which according to us is the best life, is not enough for him, but some mindless, immature opinion about happiness takes over, it will impel him, because he has the power to appropriate everything in the city. And he will realize that Hesiod was indeed wise when he said that half is somehow more than the whole. If he takes my advice, said he will abide by this life. So, do you accept, said I, this sharing of the women with the men in relation to education, children, and their guardianship of the rest of the citizens, as we have elaborated it? Whether remaining in the city or going to war, should they guard and hunt together like dogs, and to the best of their ability share everything in this way, in every way? And by doing all of this, do you accept that they will be doing what is best, and not acting contrary to the nature of the female towards the male, and their natural tendency to share with one another? I agree, said he. Do we not still have to decide if it is possible for this sharing to be engendered among human beings, just as it is among other creatures? And how is this possible? You have anticipated the point I was just about to raise. Indeed, when it comes to warfare, said I presume that the way in which they will do battle is obvious. How? They will march out together, and what is more, they will bring their children, the stronger ones, with them to the battle, so that the children of other artificers, they may see the work they will have to engage in when they are grown up, as well as looking on. They will assist and serve in everything related to the battle, and will care for their fathers and their mothers. Or have you not noticed what goes on in the various crafts? Potter's children, for instance, spend a long time looking on as assistants before they ever put their hands to the task itself. Very much so. Well, should these people show more care than our guardians in educating their children through experience and observation of what is appropriate to them? Well, that would be ridiculous, said he. Then again, every creature fights especially well when its own offspring are present. This is so, Socrates, but if they lose, as is prone to happen in war, there is no small danger that having lost their children as well as themselves, they will also make it impossible for the rest of the city to recover. True, said I. But do you think that we should arrange, firstly, that there will be no danger? Not at all. Well, then, if there is somehow to be danger, should not this be in a situation where there will be better if they are successful? Yes, of course. But do you think it makes little difference whether or not those who are to be military men watch the proceedings of the battlefield when they are children? Is the risk not worth taking? No, it does not make it. It does make a difference for the purpose you mentioned. So this must be arranged. The children must be made spectators of warfare, and once their safety is assured, all will be well. Is this so? Yes. And will not their fathers, as far as humanly possible, be knowledgeable people, able to recognize which campaigns are dangerous and which are not? Quite likely. So they will bring them on some campaigns and be wary of bringing them on others, and rightly so. And presumably, I said, they will not appoint ordinary fellows as their leaders, but those who are competent by age and experience to be guides and tutors. Yes, that is appropriate, but yes, but as we shall declare, lots of unexpected things also happen to lots of people. Very much so. Well, in the light of such possibilities, my friend, should they be equipped with wings from their earliest childhood, so if the need arises, they may take flight and be gone? What do you mean? They should go on horseback, I said, from the youngest possible age, and having learned to ride, they should be brought into view the battle mounted on horses, not spirited or warlike animals, but those that are the most swift-footed and responsive to rein, since in this way they will have the best view of their own future function, and, should the need arise, they could get away safely, following the lead of their older guides. Yes, said he, that sounds right to me. But what about the events of the battlefield? How should your soldiers behave towards themselves and towards the enemy? Am I looking at this correctly or not? Tell me, in what sense? Among themselves. Although someone who deserts his post, or throws away his weapons, or does anything else like that through cowardice, should he not be reduced in status to an artificer or farmer? Yes, certainly. And should not someone who is captured alive by the enemy be given to his captors as a gift, for them to use their captive as they wish? Precisely. But someone who excels and wins fame, do you not think he should first be crowned on campaign by his comrades in arms, youths and children in turn? Or do you not think so? I do. Shall they shake his hand? That too. But this, I suppose you would not accept. What? That he kisses and is kissed by each. This most of all, he said, and I would make an addition to the law that as long as they are involved in this campaign, no one whom he wishes to kiss is allowed to refuse. So that if someone happened to be in love with someone else, male or female, he would also be more eager to carry off the prize for valor. Very good, said I, and we have already said that a good person will have more opportunity for union than the others, and will be selected for such purposes more often than the others, and that as many children as possible may be born from a person like this. Yes, we said that. And indeed, according to Homer, it is right to honor young folk who are good through arrangements of this sort. For he says that when Ajax had found fame in battle, he was rewarded with the choicest cuts of meat, as this is the appropriate honor for someone in the prime of youth and courage, as that it honors him and increases his strength at the same time. Quite right, said he. So, we shall be persuaded by Homer on these matters at any rate. And indeed, during sacrifices and everything of this sort, we shall honor the good people, insofar as they prove themselves to be so, with hymns and whatever else we have mentioned just now, and to this we shall add seats of honor, meat, and goblets full to the brim, so that we may train these good men and women at the same time as we honor them. Excellent, said he. Very well. And in the case of those who die on campaign, shall we not first say that someone who wins fame in death belongs to the golden race? Most of all. And shall we believe Hesiod, when anyone who belongs to such a race dies, they become a hallowed spirit dwelling on the earth, averters of evil, guardians, watchful, and good of articulate speaking mortals? We shall believe him indeed. So, having found out from the god how demigods and divine beings should be buried, and what the difference is, shall we bury these men according to the mode and manner he expounds? How could we do otherwise? Hold on, I gotta let this cat out. Go ahead. Sorry. I'll forget to cut that out, so y'all just have to deal with it. It would be right to do so. Wait, wrong one. Shall we bury these men according to the mode and manner he expounds? How could we do otherwise? And, ever after, shall we care for and revere their tombs as though they were the tombs of demigods? And should we observe the same customs whenever someone who is judged to have been exceptionally good while alive dies of old age or in some other way? It would be right to do so, said he. What about this? How should our soldiers behave towards the enemy soldiers? In what sense? Well, firstly, concerning enslavement. Does it seem right that the Greek cities should enslave fellow Greeks? Or should they, as best they can, not even allow another city to do so, and accustom them to sparing their fellow Greeks for fear of enslavement by the barbarian races? Sparing them is completely better in every way. Then are they not to own a Greek slave themselves? And they are to advise their fellow Greeks to not do likewise. Yes, certainly, said he. And so in this way we would turn their attentions more towards the barbarians and show restraint towards themselves. And what about stripping and despoiling the dead after victory? Besides removing their weapons, is this the right thing to do? Or does it not give cowards an excuse for not engaging with another combatant because they are doing something needful when they are poking about among the dead? Has not many an army already been lost because of this sort of plundering? Very much so. Does it not seem like a slavish and mercenary act to strip the armor from a corpse? And is it not the mark of an unmanly and petty mind to regard the body of the dead man as the enemy, when the real foe is fled, leaving only the instrument with which he fought? Or do you think those who do this are doing anything different from dogs who get angry with the stones that struck them and do not touch the person throwing them? Not in the least, said he. So we should abandon the stripping of corpses and hindering the enemy from removing their fallen comrades. We should abandon this indeed, by Zeus. Nor shall we carry weapons off to our temples as dedicatory offerings, especially those belonging to our fellow Greeks, if we have any interest in fostering good relations towards them. Rather, we shall be afraid that it might be a defilement to bring this sort of thing from our own kin to a temple, unless, of course, the god says otherwise. Quite right, said he. And when it comes to ravaging Greek land, or the burning of houses, how will your soldiers behave towards their enemies? I would like to hear you expressing your opinion on that, said he. Well, I do not think they would do either of these. No, they should just deprive them of their annual harvest. Do you want me to tell you why? Very much so. As I see it, just as we make use of these two words, war and faction, so they are indeed two, being applied to two disputes between two different parties. I mean that the disputant is their own kindred in one case, but alien and foreign in the other case. The hostility of their own is called faction, while the hostility of the alien is called war. Yes, he said, there is nothing strange in what you were saying. Then decide whether this is strange or not. I maintain that the Greek race, to itself, is its own kindred, but is alien and foreign to the barbarian race. Well said, he replied. So, when Greeks do battle against barbarians, or barbarians against Greeks, we shall maintain that they are at war and are enemies by nature, and we should refer to this hostility as war. But when Greeks do this sort of thing to Greeks, we shall maintain that although they are friends by nature, the Greek state gets sick in this case and has fallen into faction, and we should refer to such hostility as faction. Yes, said he, we should consider it in this way. I agree. Then, take note that in faction, as it is all understood nowadays, whenever something like this arises and a city is divided, the one side devastates the land of the other and burns their homes. Such faction is regarded as an abomination, and neither party is thought to have any love for their city, or they would not have dared to ravage their nurse and mother. But it does seem reasonable for the victors to deprive the vanquished of their harvest, and to bear in mind that they are going to be reconciled and not be at war forever. Yes, said he, this way of thinking is much gentler than the other. What about this then, said I? Will not the city you are founding be a Greek city? It must be, said he. In that case, will not the people be good and gentle? Absolutely. And will they not love their fellow Greeks? And will they not regard Greece as their own, enjoying the sacred places in common with their fellows? Yes, absolutely. And in that case, will they regard a dispute with Greeks, their own people, as faction, and not refer to it as war? No, indeed. And will they conduct the dispute with a view to reconciliation? Very much so. Then they will correct their adversaries out of goodwill, not punishing them to make slaves of them, or indeed to destroy them, since they are correctors, after all, not enemies. Quite so, said he. And so, being Greeks, they will not ravage Greece or burn down its homes, nor will they accept that all the people in a particular city are their enemies, men and women and children alike. They will accept that that a few enemies are always responsible for the dispute, and for all the reasons they will not be prepared to ravage their land or pull down their houses, since most of them are friends. They will, rather, pursue the dispute to the point where those who are responsible are forced into a just response by the suffering of their innocent fellow citizens. I agree that our citizens should behave like this towards their Greek opponents, while treating the barbarians as the Greek nowadays treats us Greek. Shall we set down this law for our guardians, that they neither lay waste to the land nor burn down houses? Let us set it down and accept that this is all good. And so is what was said previously. But, Socrates, it seems to me that if someone leaves it to you to speak on such issues, you will never remember the question you pushed aside in order to say all this. Namely, the question of whether it is ever possible for this civic arrangement to come about, and in what way it is possible at all. I agree that if it were to come about, it would be really good for that city. And I will add what you omitted to say, namely, that they would fight best against their enemies, since they would be least likely to desert one another, because they recognize themselves as brothers, fathers and sons, and use these very names. And if the female sex is to campaign with them, either in the same rank or assigned to the rear guard to strike fear into the enemy and to provide assistance if needed, I know full well that with all of this they would be invincible. And I see also all the domestic advantages they would have, which you omitted to mention. Now, you may assume that I agree that there would be all these advantages, and thousands more, if this civic arrangement were to arise. And so, do not say more about it. Let us try rather, at this stage, to convince ourselves that this is possible, and how it is possible, and bid farewell to everything else. Well, I said, you have made quite a sudden onslaught upon this proposition of mine, without any allowance for my hesitation. Perhaps you do not appreciate that you are bringing a third huge and most troublesome wave upon me, when I have barely escaped the first two. Once you see and hear this, you will have more sympathy and will understand that my reluctance was reasonable, and so was my fear of recounting such a paradoxical argument and attempting to scrutinize it. The more you go on like this, he said, the less likely we are to release you from describing how this civic arrangement could arise. So speak and do not delay. In that case, should we be reminded that we got to this point by inquiring into what justice and injustice are like? We should, he said, but why do you say this? No reason, but if we do find what justice is like, shall we also insist that the just man not be different at all from justice, and that such a man is like justice in every respect? Or shall we be satisfied if he gets as close as possible to it and partakes of it to a greater extent than most people? Yes, he said, we shall be satisfied with that. Then, said I, we have been seeking justice itself, the sort of thing it is, and the perfectly just man, if there be such a man, and the sort of person he would be if he ever did come into existence to use as a model. The same considerations also apply to injustice and the utterly unjust man. The intention was to look at these standards and apply whatever became evident about their happiness or unhappiness, and be compelled to accept that in our own station, whatever is most like one of those standards will have the like portion of happiness. However, it was never the intention that we would demonstrate that such persons could come into existence. Yes, what you say is true. Now, would you maintain that a painter was not really a good painter if he painted an exquisitely beautiful person as a standard, rendered it in consummate detail, but was unable to demonstrate that such a person could ever come into existence? By Zeus, I would not, he replied. Well then, have we not, as so we say, been making a standard in words of a good city? Very much so. Then, do you maintain that our words lack merit on account of the fact that we may be unable to demonstrate that the city would be established in the manner in which we have described it? I certainly do not, he said. Then that is the truth of the matter, I said. But if, for your sake, we must endeavor to demonstrate how exactly and upon what basis this is at all possible, I must ask you again to concede the same points regarding such a demonstration. What points? Is it possible for anything to be enacted as spoken? Or must action by nature involve less truth than speech, in spite of what some people think? Well, do you agree that this is the case or not? I agree. In that case, do not force me to prove that the sort of thing we have recounted in words can also come into existence in its entirety indeed. Rather, if we are able to discover how a city that is very close to what we have described might be constituted, you must say that we have found out how this city can come into being, which was the task you set us. Would you be satisfied if that happened? I, for one, would be satisfied. And so would I, he said. Well then, after this it seems we should try to find and demonstrate what precisely is enacted badly in the various cities nowadays, so that they are not constituted like ours. Also, what change would bring a city to this manner of civic arrangement? The smallest change possible, ideally just one, otherwise two or the fewest in number, with the least impact. I entirely agree. Well, there is one change that could affect this transformation, and I think we can show this. However, it is not minor or easy, though it is feasible. What is it, said he. I am now, said I, on the verge of what we liken to be the most enormous wave. But it must be spoken, even if some wave of hilarity is literally going to deluge me with laughter and ridicule. So pay attention to what I am about to say. Speak on. Unless philosophers exercise kingly rule in cities, said I, or those whom we now call kings and rulers engage in philosophy with dignity and competence, and political power and philosophy coincide in the same person, while the vast majority whose natures incline them to pursue one rather than the other are necessarily excluded from both. The cities will have no rest from their evils, my dear Glaucon, neither, in my view, will the human race. Nor, until then, will this civic arrangement, which we have described in words, ever grow to its full potential or see the light of day. Well, this is what made me reluctant to speak earlier, for I could see this will be directly opposed to popular opinion. For it is hard to see that there is no other way for one to be happy, neither as an individual nor as a society. Well, Socrates, he said, you have blurted out an utterance and an argument like this, and now you have it said you should expect a large number of men, no common folk, to rip off their garments, grab the first weapon that comes to hand, and rush at you, naked, at full stretch, intending unspeakable deeds. If you do not ward them off in argumentation and make your escape, you will pay the penalty of being well and truly ridiculed. Are you not the one who is responsible for all of this in my case? I am doing the right thing, he said. However, I shall not desert you, but will defend you by whatever means I can, and I can do this through goodwill and encouragement. And perhaps I may respond to your questions more reasonably than someone else would. But now that you have such assistance, try to prove to the unbelievers that what you are saying is so. Try I must, since you are offering such a significant alliance. Now, if we are going to escape from the men you describe, I think it will be necessary to define for them which philosophers we are speaking of, when we dare maintain that they must rule. Then, once that has become evident, we can conduct our defense by demonstrating that it belongs to these men, by nature, to engage in philosophy and to lead in the city, why it belongs to the others to have no dealing in philosophy and to follow their leadership. Now would be the time to define this, he said. Well, come on then. You have guided by me here as if we are to have any chance of explaining this properly. Lead on, he said. Now, I said, will it be necessary to remind you, or do you already remember, that anyone who is said to love something must, if the description is correct, show that his affection is total, and he does not love one aspect of that thing while not loving another? It seems you have to remind me, for I do not really understand. That response of yours, Glaucon, would be appropriate for another person, but it is hardly appropriate for a man of love to be reminded that all those youths in their prime afflict and stir the amorous lover, and all are deemed worthy of his care and affection. Is this not how you would behave towards the fair? If someone has snub-nosed you, you praise him by calling him charming, and if he is hook-nosed, you say he is kingly. While if he is halfway between the two, you say his features are perfectly balanced. Those who are dark have a manly aspect, and those who are fair are children of gods. And as for the name, honey pale, who can invent it except a coaxing lover, who willingly tolerates a poor complexion, provided it belongs to a pretty youth? And in short, you invent any excuse at all, and resort to any expression at all, to avoid rejecting those who are in the bloom of youth. If you wish to allege that I behave as lovers do, I shall go along with you for the sake of this discussion, he replied. What about this, said I. Do you not see the lovers of wine doing the very same thing, welcoming every sort of wine on any pretext at all? Very much so. And I am sure you observe that those who love honor, if they cannot command an army, will command a lesser cohort. And if they are not honored by the important and distinguished people, they will be satisfied with the respect of the lesser, more ordinary folk, so consummate in their desire for honor. Yes, exactly. So, do you agree or disagree that when anyone is said to desire something, we should say that he desires it all, or only one part only and not another? All of it, he said. Therefore, shall we say that the philosopher does not desire one part of wisdom rather than another, but desires it all? True. Then we shall say that the person who cannot stand study is a lover of learning or a lover of wisdom, especially if he is young and still lacks the reasoning power to distinguish what is useful from what is not. Just as someone who makes difficulties about food is said neither to be hungry nor to want food, and will not be called a food lover, but a poor eater. And we shall be right to say so. However, anyone with a ready desire to taste all branches of learning, who enters into study gladly with an insatiable appetite, may properly be called a lover of wisdom. Is this so? Glaucon replied, then you will have lots of unusual examples of such people. For those who love seeing sights all seem to me, anyway, to be like this, because they take a delight in learning. And those who love hearing things are the strangest folk to include among the philosophers. For, although they would never willingly engage in serious discussion or devote their time to anything of that sort, they run around all the festivals of Dionysus, or in the city or the country, as if they hired out their ears to listen to them all. Now shall we refer to all these people, and others with knowledge of similar activities, or even minor crafts, as philosophers? Certainly not, said I, but they are similar to philosophers. And he said, whom do you refer as true philosophers? Those who love beholding the truth, said I. Well, yes, well, that is all very well, but what do you mean by that? This would not at all be easy for someone else, but I think that you will agree with me for here. About what? That since beauty is the opposite of ugliness, they are two. How could I disagree? Therefore, since they are two, each is one. I also agree with this. And the same argument applies to just and unjust, good and bad, and to all the forms. Each itself is one, but since they manifest everywhere in communion with activities, bodies, and with one another, each appears to be multiple. What you are saying is correct, he said. Well, this is how I make the distinction, separating the people you refer to as those who love seeing things or those who love skills and are practical, from those we are now discussing, those who are the only ones who may properly refer to themselves as philosophers. In what way? He said. Presumably, I said, those who love hearing things and seeing things, delight in beautiful sounds and colors and shapes and everything fashioned from these, but their mind is unable to behold the nature of beauty itself and to delight in that. Yes, he said, that is certainly the case. On the other hand, would not those who can have recourse to beauty itself and behold it just by itself be quite rare? Very much so. Now, do you think that a person is awake or living in a dream if he recognizes beautiful objects, but does not recognize beauty itself, and cannot follow someone else if he leads him to the knowledge of this? Think about this. Is not dreaming an activity in which someone, either in sleep or while awake, thinks that a likeness is not a likeness, but is itself the very object which the likeness resembles? Yes, I am inclined to say that a person like that is dreaming, he said. Well then, what about someone who by contrast thinks that there is beauty itself and is able to behold it and whatever partakes of it, without thinking that that which partakes is beauty itself, or that beauty itself is that which partakes. Do you think this person is awake or living in a dream? He is very much awake, he said. Would we not be right to refer to the mental state of this man as knowledge, because he knows, and to the mental state of the other as opinion, because he is forming opinions? Yes, certainly. Now, what if this fellow, whom we accuse of forming opinions and of not knowing, gets angry with us and argues that we are not speaking the truth? Should we be able to console him and engage in gentle persuasion, whilst concealing the fact that he is not of sound mind? You should really try anyway, he said. Well, come on then, let us consider what we shall say to him. Or, if you prefer, we could put some questions to him, maintaining that if he does not know something, nobody will begrudge him that. Rather, we would be delighted to see that he knew something. So tell us this. Does someone who know something or nothing? Now, you should reply on behalf of this fellow. I reply that they know something, he said. Is it something that is or is not? Something that is, for how could something that is not be known? Well, we are satisfied that no matter how we consider the matter, what entirely is entirely knowable, and what in no way is entirely unknowable. We are completely satisfied. Very well. But if in fact something is characterized in such a way that it is both is and is not, would it not lie between what purely is and what in no way is? Yes, in between. Therefore, since knowledge is directed towards what is, and ignorance is necessarily directed to what is not, we must search for something in between ignorance and knowledge, which is directed to that which lies between what is and what is not, if there happens to be such a thing. Yes, certainly. Now, do we say that opinion is something? What else could we say? And it is a different power from knowledge, or the same power. Different. So opinion is directed to one and knowledge to another, each on the basis of his own power. Just so. Is not knowledge naturally directed towards what is, and to know what is as it is? But before we go on, I think we must make a further distinction. How? Shall we say that powers are a class of things that are, by which we are able to do whatever we can do, and anything else is able to do whatever it can do? So I say, for example, that seeing and hearing are powers, if you understand what I'm trying to explain. I do understand. Well, listen, I shall tell you my view of them. Indeed, with respect to powers, I do not discern any color or shape or anything of this sort as I do in many other things. Features to which I can look in order to distinguish for myself between some objects and others. But in the case of power, I look only into what is directed to and what it accomplishes, and on this basis I call each of them a power. And whatever is directed to the same object and accomplishes the same thing, I call the same. While anything that is directed to a different object and accomplishes something different, I refer to as different. How about you? What do you do? Just as you do. At this stage, I should ask you the question again, my excellent friend. Do you say that knowledge is a power? Or, in what class do you place it? In this one, he said, it is the strongest power of all powers. And what about opinion? Shall we assign it to power or another form? To no other form, for opinion is nothing other than the power by which we are able to form opinions. Yes, and you did agree a little earlier that knowledge and opinion are not the same. How could any reasonable person, he replied, ever suggest that something that does not make mistakes is the same as something that makes mistakes? Well expressed, said I, and it is obvious that we agree that opinion is different from knowledge. Yes, different. So, is each of them by nature a different power directed to something different? They must be. Well, is knowledge directed to what is? To know what is as it is? Yes. And we say that opinions form opinions. Yes. Does it not form opinions about the same thing that knowledge knows? And will the objects of knowledge and opinion be the same, or is that impossible? According to what we have agreed, that is impossible. If in fact the different power is naturally directed to something different, and opinion, knowledge are both powers, and each is different, which is what we are saying, then we cannot accept, based on this, that the object of knowledge and the object of opinion are the same. Now, if the object of knowledge is what is, would not the object of opinion be something other than what is? Yes, something other than. Well, does it form opinions about what is not? Or is it impossible to even form an opinion about what is not? Reflect on this. Does not someone who forms an opinion apply the opinion to something? Or again, is it possible to form an opinion which is an opinion about nothing? That is impossible. Rather, the person forming an opinion forms it about some one thing. Yes. However, would it be at all correct to refer to what is not as some one thing? Instead, it should be called nothing. Entirely so. Well, did we, by necessity, assign ignorance to what is not, and knowledge to what is? We did, and rightly so, he said. So opinions are not formed about what is or what is not. They are not. Then opinion is neither ignorance nor knowledge. It seems not. Well, in that case, it is beyond them, exceeding either knowledge in clarity or ignorance in obscurity. It does neither. Alternatively, I said, does opinion appear to you as darker than knowledge, and yet brighter than ignorance? Very much so, he said. Does it lie within these two extremes? Yes. So opinion would be in between knowledge and ignorance. Yes, exactly. But did we not say earlier that if anything were to prove capable of being and of not being at the same time, it would lie in between what purely is and what entirely is not, and that neither knowledge nor ignorance would be directed towards it, but something which for its part makes its appearance in between knowledge and ignorance would be directed towards it. Correct. But now the power that we call opinion has made its appearance in between these two. It has. Then what remains for us to discover, apparently, is something partaking of both being and non-being, which may not properly be called either pure being or pure non-being. Should that be found, we would be right to call it the object of opinion, thus assigning the powers at the extremes to the objects at the extremes, and the powers that lie in between to the objects that lie in between. Is this how we should proceed? It is. Now that we have established all this, let this good fellow speak to me and give me an answer. This man who thinks there is no such thing as beauty itself, or a form of beauty itself, which is always just the same as it is, even though he does not think that there are many beautiful things. He is someone who loves seeing things, and cannot endure it if someone says that beauty is one, and so too is justice. And the same goes for the others. I shall say to him, best of men, tell me this. Are there any of these numerous beautiful things which will not appear to be ugly? Are there any of these many just accusations that will not appear unjust? Any sacred things which will not appear profane? No, said Glaucon, they must somehow appear to be both beautiful and ugly, and the same applies to your other instances. And what about the many things which are doubles? Do they appear to be halves any less than doubles? No less. And things we say are large or small, light or heavy, will they be called by these names any more than the opposite names? Yes, each of them always has both names. Then if anyone says that any of these many things is this, is it no more this than not this? It is like party games involving the double meanings of words, he replied, and the children's riddle about a eunuch striking the bat, in which they also make obscure statements about what is what it was struck by, and what it was sitting upon. In fact, these are too ambiguous, and none of them is capable of being thought differently to be and not to be, either both or neither. So, do you know what I do with them? I said, or can you put them in any better place than in between being and not being? Presumably, they will not prove to be darker than what is not, involving more non being, or brighter than what is, involving more being. Very true, he said. Well, it seems that we have found the numerous conceptions about beauty or anything else, which most people hold, are somehow rolling about between what is not and what purely is. That is what we have found. And we have agreed previously that if something like this were to turn out, it should be referred to as an object of opinion rather than an object of knowledge. The wandering object is apprehended by the intermediate power. We agreed upon this. So, those who see many beautiful things without beholding beauty itself, and who are unable to follow someone who is leading them towards it, who see many just actions but not justice itself, or anything like that, we shall say that these people form opinions on all these matters, but know nothing about the matters on which they are opining. We must, he said. And what about those who, by contrast, behold things themselves, things which are always just the same as they are? Do they not know rather than opine? This must also be so. And will we not say that these people embrace and love the objects of knowledge, while those others embrace and love the objects of opinion? Or do you not remember? We said that the others love and contemplate beautiful sounds and colors and the like, but they cannot bear to hear there is such a thing as beauty itself. We remember, in that case, would it be offensive to call them lovers of opinion or philodoxial, rather than lovers of wisdom or philosophical? Would they get very angry with us if we referred to them in this way? Not if they are persuaded by me, anyway, he said, for it is not appropriate to be angry at the truth. Then should those who embrace what anything actually is be called philosophers or lovers of wisdom rather than lovers of opinion? Yes, entirely so. And so we end Book 5. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a not too difficult topic. This was deep in the realm of philosophy, discussing what exactly is philosophy. I hold, apparently as Socrates does, that it is the one who seeks knowledge, whether it be for your detriment or bad, much as the same as justice. Knowledge of truth in and of itself is more than sufficient. I don't have a whole lot to add to it. Again, we are just increasing knowledge. We are passing out just a little bit of wisdom. There is a lot here that you should definitely get back to the link below and read for yourself. Go back through it and kick it around in your own head and see what you think about the things that they talk about. That is what philosophy is. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.